Alrighty, all. Hello and welcome to what should be a fascinating video. The topic certainly is. We have a trend that has been happening for just a couple years now, almost in the same timeline as I've been learning about this stuff. It's like 6 months later, I see it happen in the real world. It's weird. So I will tie this all in at the end. But the main point here is that the US government is transitioning into they're dropping GM basically, not totally, but mostly. Our U.S. government, for the first time in my lifetime and even beyond, is going to be using European style vehicles like I've seen in emergency vehicle videos and police vehicles and government vehicle videos from abroad. The U.S. government is dropping the all famous, Chevy Suburban and Chevy Tahoes. And they are instead using BMWs as of last month. So if you see here, you kind of Google this, it comes up with a bunch of stories and videos. FBI dropped Chevy and will now use BMW SUVs in its fleet. Now this comes to, I don't know whole logistics here, but I think Kash Patel, the director of the FBI here, was sort of the one that at least announced this, or maybe he was in charge of making this decision. I'm not exactly sure. But you can see all these different articles. You can see this pretty slick-looking BMW X5, right? Seeing a beautiful German SUV as a U.S. government vehicle is quite bizarre. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It is just so different because I'm so used to us having the same fleet vehicles from one end of the country to the other, right? It's the same, 3 police cars they can choose from, the same, 2 or 3 government fleet vehicles I can choose from, and that's it, right? And of course, I've had a thing on my channel where I look at different vehicles from across the world, right, in different roles, and of course there's a lot more diversity, and sometimes not, but it's just cool to see the differences. Well, now it won't be so different because, again, seeing BMWs, you see the Chevy Suburban there, with the red and blues, and seeing that replaced with Beamers is going to be quite interesting. But it gets more interesting than that, because if we actually go to this article here, this thing, I thought it was funny. That's why you got to look at a bunch of different sources, and I did, luckily, because this is the first one. And it does not tell the whole story. It just basically paints it as this is an embarrassment, and that, it's a questionable decision, literally as this actually freezes. I now can't scroll. Maybe I guess you can't bad talk Forbes while you have the page open, because now it won't work. You're seeing this live. I love it. But luckily I read this beforehand. Basically, you can read this, right? They're coming under fire, obviously for other things, government misspends. Wow. Yeah. Tell me something I don't know, right? That's par for the course, unfortunately. But what's interesting is this is actually a decent move, just because these BMWs are actually, for one, they're going to be a little bit better for not drawing attention, because we've used the same blacked out Suburbans, blacked out Chevy Tahoes, which is just shorter wheelbase, and occasionally blacked out Ford Expedition, which is basically a competitor to the Suburban, again, another large SUV. Because they always use those, if you see, 2 or 3 of those in a row, you pretty much know, okay, something's up, right? It's got to be some sort of government fleet right there, government convoy. And if they're trying to go for, trying to be a little bit anonymous and trying to go under the radar, that's it. Over time, that's not been a great move anymore, because everyone can see them. They think they're just riding in a blacked out Suburban, but in reality, they stand out kind of like a sore thumb in traffic, because not everyone is driving a blacked out government issued Suburban. So with this Beamer, it's a little bit, actually more camouflaged, right? BMWs and other German cars are still pretty popular here in the US. They're not, maybe as common as a daily driver as a Honda, Toyota, or a Ford or a Chevy, but they're common enough, and definitely no one associates those with government vehicles here at all. So from a safety perspective, I actually think this is a better move. But also, the interesting part is when you kind of go through these videos, I actually leave some of these linked down below. You can see this thing looks super sharp. Of course, I love the lighting packages, and they can change those up. It'll be kind of cool to see how they end up doing them. But, this thing's in my opinion, not that this really matters, but if they have to, you know, if you're a government and you gotta run from some crazy event, you know, or car chase, I like Suburbans, but this BMW I feel like is going to be a little more nimble, right? It's going to be a little quicker. It's going to handle better. It still can, you know, go off road and all this types of things. So I think it's a good all around vehicle. It's not as big, but you know, again, I don't think that's going to be a deal breaker. If anything, the size reduction could actually help when it comes to maneuverability. You know, I'm referencing a lot from this video.
From a taxpayer.
You know, I will leave her linked down below. So Car Coach. She has the full, you know, info here. If you would like to check her out, like I said, I'll leave that linked. She mentioned some interesting things, right? And that is that this BMW fleet. Here's the big thing. It's actually saving American taxpayer money, right? So for all the people that are outraged, here's a couple points. Well, A, this BMW is literally a luxury SUV, and of course it's armored, bulletproof glass, you know, the works. This is an actual government fleet vehicle built to protect, right? Just like the GM Defense Special Suburbans, right? But here's the thing: these things cost between $200,000 and $300,000 US. These BMWs. And you got to brace yourself. The Chevy Suburbans, all of a sudden, when you hook them up for defense contracts, these things are costing anywhere between $600,000 US all the way up to $3.5 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $3.5 million US. And you all of a sudden quite understand, yeah, you get a fleet of those, it's going to add up really, really quickly. And mind you, as someone who has had older Chevy Suburbans, I absolutely love them. But my problem is that these newer, you know, the old ones were great, right? I still, you know, can find a 20 or 30-year-old Suburban fired up and it'll drive great. The new ones are not, right? It takes you 2 seconds to look up how many recalls and how many engine failures there have been on these new 2021 and newer Chevy Tahoe, Chevy Suburbans, right? These new 6.2-liter V8s are just a nightmare now. They're not what they used to be. They have all this CAFE standards and government emissions and cylinder deactivation and just a bunch of stuff going on. And these things have lost their reputation completely. These things are overpriced. You know, even civilian models are $80,000 to $110,000, and people are literally putting 3,000 or 4,000 miles on these things brand new in the first 6 months, and they're blowing engines, like literally. So, you know, let's use our head here. Maybe that's part of this too. Maybe they're like, you know, we can't really trust these things anymore. Why would we spend triple, quadruple, hell, even 9 or 10 times the money for a vehicle that we don't know if we can even trust? Versus these BMWs, which are, I guess, pretty tried and true, at least in this configuration. I know Beamer's had an up and down reputation. But if anything, people overblow it. Usually they're actually pretty reliable. You have to maintain them. And maybe maintenance costs slightly more. But I tell you what, you can't deny that upfront cost, $200,000 to $300,000 versus $1 million, $2 million. Yeah, it's not even close. And yeah, it's funny if you actually go to the comments of this video. Let me adjust you guys here. Okay, this is pretty funny because we have people are actually thinking logically here. Starting here, when BMW is cheaper than a Chevy, that's a problem, and that's exactly it. The BMW is a good product. It's got all the armored specification. It meets their specifications, hence why the government is now ordering fleets of BMWs only, right? Not GM Defense Suburbans. And the fact that they're actually saving money is hilarious because on paper you wouldn't think armored up BMW would be cheaper than a Chevy Suburban, but that's the crazy world the U.S. is living in now. Houston, we have a big problem when BMW built for the same purpose can cost less than half what a Chevy does. GM currently recalling 600,000 trash 6.2s. That's the engine. Couldn't have anything to do with it? Yeah, I think it definitely has something to do with it. And for all the people, you know, again, like this article that seemed to rip on it, that seems to have activated again, you know, calling it controversial, calling it a joke, blah, blah, blah. What's funny is this BMW is actually these BMW X5 SUVs and, of course, the armored versions called the VR6. These are made in the U.S., in the U.S. state of South Carolina. I think it's actually BMW's biggest plant worldwide. Could be wrong on that. But the point is, these are awesome German cars, but they're actually made here in the US. So even that angle doesn't work if you're criticizing this. So I think it's interesting because as you guys know, I'm an American who loves American stuff, but I also love learning about the world. And, I'm not a blind patriot, right? I think it's very American to love this place, but also be very critical of it, which a lot of Americans aren't. They just think we're the best at everything and never question it. And I think that's just such a very small-minded and odd outlook on things. I used to love Chevy Suburbans, but the point is now I don't think they're nearly as good as they used to be. And I think that GM is ripping off the government, but more importantly, ripping off me and other taxpayers, because these things are ridiculously expensive and they're not even built like they used to be. And I don't think they're worth the money. And I think it's kind of interesting that we finally, for the first time in literally ever, are seeing the government wake up and maybe start looking elsewhere for things. And I can't believe that we're going to be seeing the US government BMWs in the fleet. I think that's very fascinating. And it's a trend. Since I have started looking at these things, remember, all of this was always America only growing up. And now I have seen this. I have seen our mail trucks. I'll show pictures on the screen. We literally use the same beat up, rickety, box on wheels, 80s truck chassis, Grumman LLVs. Now, to be fair, those things were awesome. They were very durable and very simple, but they did the job, right? But they did it for a long time. They were so tired, the fleet of these things. And literally, I believe in like 2023, 2024, they started replacing these, and now they're fully replaced around me with literally, again, German delivery vans, Mercedes-Benz. United States Postal Service literally uses Mercedes-Benz Metris delivery vans. So I think that's very interesting as well. I have seen the big, Ram ambulances, and, Ford E350s and all these things, these big Ford truck ambulances that we've always seen, again, for decades and decades. I've seen those been replaced by Eurovan ambulances like you would see, like I have seen in videos, looking at ambulances in the UK and Denmark and Germany, right? Like, it's so interesting to see this shift. I've even seen some of our police vehicles that are American police vehicles still, but using more of the Euro style liveries where we have like the highlighter color checker patterns on the back of the vehicle and stuff. I've seen that a little more often now, whereas I only used to see that in videos about European countries. Not to mention the motorsports, right? People are finally ditching NASCAR because it's, again, a fraction of what it used to be. It just doesn't quite hit the same anymore for various reasons. And now you've seen all of a sudden Formula One gear in stores. Never saw that growing up. Never even saw that 5 years ago. And we went from 0 calendar dates to 3 Formula One races on the international stage here in the U.S., right? And even U.S. teams looking to establish in Formula One as well. Same with Rally. Rally's planning on coming here, I believe, this year, WRC, right? So my point is, I think it's really cool. I think that it's okay to like your country, like fellow Americans, sure. But I think it's cool to be part of the world, right? That's where we're at. We're on Earth. We're not on a planet called America. We're on a planet called Earth. And I think it's fun integrating other things. And it's very interesting seeing all the European kind of style adoptions we're doing here, especially when it comes to vehicles and motorsport. I just think it's fascinating. And I would, jokingly say, I think I played a part in that. I don't know. I don't know if I have, but I tell you what, it's suspiciously the exact same timeline. I started doing a lot of Australian and Euro motorsport in 2021, early 2022, and now in the following year after that, I see that make its way over here in real life. Same with analyzing the emergency vehicles and the Euro vehicles and stuff. It's like a year or two after I start covering this stuff thoroughly, it makes its way over here, right? Like, these things didn't exist before that. Anyway, I'm not going to toot my own horn. I'm kind of joking around, but I think it's an interesting coincidence nonetheless. That's really going to do it here. If you really want to follow this, if you're interested, there's better videos or more articles that thoroughly cover this. But I'm just giving the bullet points and basically saying I'm fascinated and kind of excited to see some, armored BMWs out as government vehicles. I think that's kind of interesting. I would love to hear your opinions down below and maybe what you've heard. But yeah, the BMW X5 VR6, they call it. The VR6 is the armored version, the government fleet version, will be hitting the U.S. streets in official capacity, or maybe already has. So I find that just fascinating. Thank you for tuning in. That will be it for this one. And a little bit something different, but I liked it. I thought I had to cover this and tie it in with kind of the channel connection and, my experience as an American, embracing, different cultures in different countries and seeing it come to life on my own streets when I see the mail truck and it's a Mercedes pulling up to the house. It's just, I think it's cool and I think it's very interesting. But that's going to do it for this one. I appreciate you watching. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, y'all. Catch you later.